Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2011 President's Panel, The Many Faces of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I like to think the President's Panel is becoming a traditional part of Alumni Weekend, and it's designed to highlight some of the extraordinary talent associated with the university while engaging an audience in what I think is an important topic for the day. I can assure you that the conversation that you'll have will be stimulating. In a moment, I'll turn it over to our moderator, who will introduce the members of the panel. But first, I'd like to take just a moment to tell you why we've selected entrepreneurship and innovation as the topic for this afternoon. Actually, the motivation is quite simple. As the economies of the world expand and competition increases, our economic prosperity and everyone's economic prosperity and our ability to create quality jobs depends on our ability to innovate products and services that will be most in demand across the world. Today, great research universities like Boston University are incredibly important hubs in the economic engine of this country. As you'll hear from several of our panelists, these institutions generate the research ideas and concepts that become the products of tomorrow. Whether it's a new drug therapy for a disease, a new light-emitting diode that revolutionizes lighting, or integrated software hardware platforms to aid business and consumers, such as the products of Netezza that Saxena's company founded, Netezza founded several years ago, or faculty like Jim Collins have worked on in their research laboratories. Our faculty, students, and alumni are innovating for the world of tomorrow. Boston University has many tech entrepreneurs in our departments of science, engineering, and medicine. In many ways, in this arena, we're not as well known as some institutions, and that's really because we're a relatively young research university, really emerging on the scene in the last 20 years. So few of the companies that have been spawned by our faculty and students have had the opportunity to become those kind of name brand corporate juggernauts that we associate with success. But we do have some companies that appear well on their way. But equally as important at Boston University is that we are a training ground for another breed of innovators. Those who look at the world through the eyes of business, media, and communications. Look at the pull of the consumer, the viewer, and the user. Innovators who focus on the market. The playground of these innovators spans from all the first world retail markets where one can innovate in the selling of baseball caps to online retail like Ben Fischman, or in the not-for-profit sector where organizations are meeting the demands and needs for people across the globe like Meera, Ghandi. Boston University educates these entrepreneurs, innovating in every business and service you can imagine. You can meet future innovators when you visit our graduate and undergraduate classrooms all across the university, in the College of Communication and the School of Management, in courses like the Ad Lab in COM, where students get directly involved in real-world advertising. What makes Boston University unique is the blend of all of these individuals from all across the university with individual talent and expertise, but with the common thread that they will innovate and create. Many of you in the audience are part of this wonderful group of experienced innovators who have roots at BU, like the participants on the panel. Others, especially the students in the audience, are working to join this elite club to become the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. I say welcome and good luck. Leading our panel today is, as moderator, is Vinit Nijhawan, the Managing Director of BU's Office of Technology Development and Director of Enterprise Programs of our Institute of Technology, Entrepreneurship, and Commercialization, or ITEC for short. Vinit is also a lecturer on strategy and innovation in the School of Management. Vinit has more than 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur, building 5 startup companies and serving as CEO of 3 of them. He was a venture partner at the Massachusetts-based firm Key Venture Partners, where over a 2-year period he sourced more than 200 deals and made one investment that was acquired for $430 million. He knows how to take ideas and help turn them into both products and profits. Vinit, thank you for agreeing to moderate our panel this afternoon. Let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Brown. Those are very kind remarks. Welcome, audience. So I think you can all read the bios, but we have an amazing panel here, a real mix between an academic entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and two technology entrepreneurs, though I think Ben more of a retail entrepreneur.
I wouldn't be accused of being a technologist.
Okay. So we've got a really nice mix of panels, but before I jump into the panelists, let's try to understand who's in the audience. So how many students do we have here? Quite a few. Fantastic. How many of you have already started a company? Look at that. A few already have. How many of you really want to start a company? We're going to encourage more of you to start one after this panel. That's part of our goal, is how we get you enthusiastic about, thinking about those ideas that you have while you're here at university and transforming them into a startup, because that's what we need in this country. We need more startups that create jobs and that create wealth. Wealth creation is important. Without wealth creation, you can't do wealth distribution. So this panel is about wealth creation, panelists. We're going to talk about how we're going to create wealth. So the way the panel is going to go like this is we're going to spend, each panelist will spend 5 minutes or so with some opening remarks about their entrepreneurial experiences and their connection to BU. And then we'll open it up for audience Q&A. You all have little cards. You can put in questions on them. They'll be brought up to me, and I'll moderate a Q&A. So with that, I'm going to ask Meera Ghandi to say a few words.
Thank you. I was at this school 25 years ago. And one evening, I was in the evening classes because I was expecting my child, Kiran, who's actually sitting right here in the second row. And the founder of Smart Foods came to speak to us. And now that I see there's so many students in the audience, I'm compelled to share this. We were all very excited that he was coming to speak to us. And he started out talking about his inspiration. And he said his inspiration was popcorn and cheese pizza. He loved eating cheese pizza, and he loved eating popcorn. His mom said he was never going to amount to anything. And all he thought about was, how does he take cheese pizza and popcorn and put it together in one food? Voila, Smart Foods, that then he sold to Frito-Lay, et cetera, et cetera. That night, what he said to us was, if you have an idea and you are convinced of your idea, that is 98% of the game. Because if you're really convinced with your idea, you'll find a way to make it happen. And if you find a way to make it happen, you're going to convince other people that they want to be part of it, and so on. And that was the crux of his talk. And I was just completely inspired. Before I go on to talk about my experiences with the not-for-profit world, with the profit world, I want to share a couple of quick things. The first is setting the stage. What is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is about taking risk. The behavior of the entrepreneur reflects the kind of person willing to put his or herself on the line, his career and financial security, and take risks in the name of the idea, spending as much time as well as capital on an uncertain venture. Knight goes on to say, there are 3 types of uncertainty. Risk, which is measurable statistically. Ambiguity, which is hard to measure statistically. And third, uncharted territory, which is almost impossible to measure statistically. However, this piece and the place of disharmony creating and idiosyncratic behavior is the stuff good entrepreneurs are made of. You can read more about this study. It's fascinating. It's Frank H. Knight and Peter Drucker, 1970, hugely successful. The other quick thing I wanted to share with you, which I thought you would find interesting, is something I found in the New York Times last Sunday. I don't know how many of you saw it. I hope you'll go back and pull it up. But basically, this very, very cute story is about entrepreneurs, and it's based on the quote from George Bernard Shaw. He was Irish, and he said, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. This story in the New York Times that I hope you'll pull up and read, it's actually very humorous and it's fantastic, talks about Daniel Epstein, who says he's an unreasonable man, happily and proudly unreasonable. Entrepreneurs who want to change the world, he says, have got to be a little crazy. He is the founder of the Unreasonable Institute in Boulder, Colorado, and he now conducts schools for unreasonable entrepreneurs. Epstein's club boasts thousands and thousands of millionaires and billionaires. His theory is we're all unreasonable, but we're clearly not crazy. With that little bit of what should I call it? Definitive stage set on entrepreneurship. I myself left BU and I took the safe path. I started with Macy's. I was a buyer for Macy's until I had my third child and I decided to start my own business. I had a paper that I did in BU called Meera Collections. It was an idea I had for a business. I actually pulled it out and I used that and I started a business where I did beading for designers and did extremely well. Sold that business, went on to India, and after that completely changed and I went into the world of not-for-profit. I currently have a foundation called the Giving Back Foundation, and every day of my life I am looking at there's so many hundreds and thousands of foundations out there. Sorry, Ben. I didn't mean to hit that. There's so many hundreds and thousands of foundations out there. How do I take my foundation and give it an entrepreneurial twist? How do I raise more money for it? How do I set the bar higher? How do I do things that are different? Small examples. I finished a film. I have a book coming out. The Coffee Table book features different charities. On December 15th in Delhi, what we're going to do is we're going to have different people from different walks, not only Bollywood, some Bollywood, a nurse from a clinic down the street where my mother lives, a lawyer, different people read chapters from the book at the book party to make it different, exciting, and hopefully sell a lot of books because the money goes back to the foundation. How are we on time? So I'll come back to other stories in my life where entrepreneurship has played a role, but I hope I've set the stage.
Well, being a reasonable man, I'm sure I'll find ways to get more stories out of you. Ben Fischman, unreasonable man, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm clearly unreasonable. I don't have quite the prepared statements, nor do I have suggested reading for the audience, but potentially some interesting stuff. I actually, maybe be provocative right at the start here. I actually disagree. I think there's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas, and a lot of people ask me, how did you do it? Why did you have some success early on? What happened? And my answer is always pretty simple. I just did it. A lot of people think about the idea and vacillate about the idea and talk about the idea and research the idea, when in all that time, if they had simply tried the idea, they would have learned either it doesn't work or it does work. And so to me, the idea is really an important part of it. But if you don't do it, it never happens. So that's the only sure thing for sure is if you don't do it, it doesn't happen. So ideas are great and execution is incredibly important. And maybe execution is the only way an idea actually happens. So pretty practical stuff. My career has been one of practicality, I guess. I haven't invented or split the atoms. I haven't saved the world. I was a student at BU. I started my business here. I started my business in my apartment with my 3 buddies. I actually started my business, my first business, sitting in the very last row of an auditorium in the College of Communication. applications and just identified a market opportunity, and that market opportunity was simple. You looked cascading down the rows and rows of fellow juniors, and every single person had a baseball cap on, and none of us had a place to buy these baseball caps. There were hundreds of stores that sold baseball caps, but there wasn't a single cap in any of these stores that any of us wanted to wear. And that's the simple idea of where lids came from. It was a small format category killer. The idea was that we knew what the consumer wanted, and it was that simple. And we very quickly got into business, and we very quickly got a vote yes. My focus group were all my friends in the school. I used to sit in the different buildings here and talking to people and showing people product, and the business was a little bit born out of necessity. The most important lesson I learned back when I was a junior here at BU, missing out on a decent amount of the fun actually, because I did work pretty hard on this new business that I thought could be something interesting, but I didn't know that much. I knew about the baseball cap. I understood this very simple product. No great honor, but I was the real expert on this simple product. But I surrounded myself out of necessity, no wisdom. I surrounded myself with a lot of people that really understood how to build a business. And what was interesting for me is I was naive. I had no ego caught up in what I could do. My ego was completely caught up in the business. And because that ego was in the business, it allowed me to surround myself with people that challenged everything that I thought. I had no idea how important the lesson was. I take no credit for it at the time, but it's the lesson that has allowed me to build some of the companies that me and my teams have created. I don't take credit for the companies that I've been a part of. It is, honest to God, it's about incredible people that have surrounded me and the teams we've put together that have built really unique companies. The company that I'm currently the head of is a company called Rue La La. Raise your hand if you've heard of Rue La La. Raise your hand if you haven't. This is my favorite part. So the business is 3 years old. It's a little bit of a phenomenon what's occurred. We have about 5 million members. All the members have come from being invited by their friends. And we've seen some remarkable success. We have challenges in every direction, but luckily the successes have outpaced the challenges. And I still believe the market opportunity from a growth perspective is enormous because people don't know the brand yet, and that opportunity to me is just phenomenal. The simple notion of Rue La La was redefining e-commerce. For us, e-commerce, we looked at e-commerce 3-4 years ago, and what we realized was it was a business based out of technology and convenience. Web 1.0, we think of it as, was vast warehouses full of merchandise. It was typing into a search box what you were looking for. And by the way, every ad, every television ad, every magazine ad was of a woman lying in bed with her laptop demonstrating that, wow, you can shop from home. And that's great. And by the way, my wife and I, we buy everything from Amazon.com. Everything. From paper towels to books and music. It's so easy. I love the convenience of it. But never, not once have we been excited about shopping Amazon.com. And for the consumer, shopping's fun. Shopping is about the thrill and the rush and the sex and the sizzle and the theater. It's not about the sterility of just finding what you want. That's not what makes shopping so great. And our notion was, how do you go online? How do you change the dynamic? How do you create an environment that makes your blood rush a little bit? How do you create a dynamic that makes you want to buy right then and right there? And that was the entire thesis behind the business that we created. The problem with e-commerce is it's so bloody convenient. So what happens? There's this term called shopping cart abandonment. In other words, you go onto a site, you peruse the site, you add to your cart, and you don't end up buying because you'll come back later. Whereas if you drove to a mall, you buy because you just found the spot and you went through the hassle. Maybe you waited in line at the cash register, but online that didn't exist. How do you change the world of shopping cart abandonment? Well, you let the consumer know if they don't buy right now, it's not going to be here when they come back. You don't, instead of what we all think of as great retail companies or great consumer companies, always put the customer first. We certainly believe in great service, but at the same time, a little bit of what Steve Jobs says, the customer doesn't always know what they want or how they want it, and if you can put really innovative new ways for the consumer to shop in front of them, they may have said no in a focus group, but quite often they'll say yes when they actually do the experience. So for us, Rue La La is, yes, a great fashion site, or a very good fashion site, hopefully going to become a great fashion site. But really the idea is, how do you put e-commerce on its head and change the behavior a little bit and really make the experience into something truly, truly addictive?
So impulse buying reminds me of Kmart's blue light special. So this is the online blue light special.
Well, let's keep that analogy in this room. How about that?
shows my age too. So we're going to move on to Jeet, who sort of builds part of that infrastructure that helps online retailers. And I think retailers are probably, a significant customer base for Netezza.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I got my MBA at Boston University many years ago. And at that time, I was an engineer working for a computer company here in Massachusetts. And the reason I went to business school is I was kind of bored as an engineer. First of all, I was not very good as an engineer, so I thought there must be some other thing that I could do. And somebody suggested that maybe I should go and get a business degree, as if that is going to help me. So I did that. The thing that I remember most is when I was working in this firm, and this firm was doing very well. Some of you might even be old enough to know this company. It was called Data General Corporation, a big successful company in the mini computer business. And I remember that they gave me a chance to work in different parts of the company. I worked in sales, I worked in marketing, I worked in product planning, and so on. Every time they had a problem and they were looking for somebody to do something, I raised my hand and they said, yeah, you can try that. So that was quite exciting. And one thing that occurred to me during all those transitions was that the people who started Data General, and Data General was a very successful company. It got to about $1 billion in sales. People talk about market cap these days. I don't. And $1 billion in sales is a lot of, is a fairly big size company. And the thing that I realized working there is that the people who had started the company, they may have been smart, they may have worked hard, but they were really not anybody different than I was. And I said, if these guys can do it, I should be able to do it. And that's my message to everybody here, is that it is not the people who start companies and get written up and the press talks about the market caps of billions of dollars and all that. Don't get carried away by all that. I mean, those are ordinary people just like you and I. And it is that thought which I sort of became very clear about while working at Data General. I said, if these guys can do it, I can do it. And I should go out and try on my own. And that's what led me to start a company of my own. I've been an entrepreneur now for more than 30 years, which is a very long time for many of you here. And even though now I'm not actively working in any one company, I still love the whole idea of entrepreneurship. And I especially like to work with younger entrepreneurs. At this stage in my life, I'm involved with about 8 companies, all of them in different phases of technologies. And all those 8 companies are companies that I find very exciting. I find the energy, the positive energy that a startup brings as very, very exhilarating, very exciting. And even though Vinit said that this is all about wealth creation, at this stage in my life, I look at entrepreneurship as really a very philanthropic activity. I believe that the biggest advantage of a startup or of any kind is the amount of positive energy that it brings in the ecosystem. Many times I'm still reminded when I meet some fellow employees who worked with us many years ago, and somebody would come and talk to me, and they would tell me that the early phases of those companies, whichever companies I was involved with, were so exciting that they had such a good time that it created such a positive energy in their lives that irrespective of the financial gains, and many of those folks benefited substantially from the financial outcomes of those organizations, but irrespective of the financial outcome, the positive aspect of things that they learned, the energy that it brought in, the friendships that they built, and the kinds of the sense of accomplishment they had when they built the product and they saw customers using it and becoming productive with those products was the best part of those startups. So my comment to most of the younger folks here in the audience is that irrespective of whether a firm becomes successful or not, and there are a lot of things that determine success. Luck plays a huge role in whether a firm is successful or not. But irrespective of that outcome, the learning experience and the positive aspect of a startup is so exciting that I think everybody ought to give it a try, irrespective of the outcome. Even if it is a failure by sort of our standards, and we determine failure and success by whether people made money or not. But irrespective of that, the experience that you learn in a small, exciting venture, you cannot compare that by working in a very, very large setting. I have nothing against big corporations. All big corporations at one time were small. But after a while, they become very process-oriented, and they are good places to go and work. But it is not the same thing as when you go out on your own, or when you go out and work with a small team of your friends or fellow employees. That excitement, that positive energy is just amazingly different than going and working for a larger organization. And I think one thing I want to repeat, that I think everybody here should go out with the notion that people who build companies and become so-called successful, they are not very special people. In fact, they are very ordinary people. But they took the chance, they went out on their own, they had some beliefs in themselves and their ability to do something. They were not too concerned about whether the world will think they failed or succeeded. They just went out and did it. And that is the important thing, that you don't want to get to as old as I am and say, I should have done this. You should just go out and do it. And by doing it, you'll be a better person as a result of that, irrespective of the financial outcomes.
That's fantastic. So, you talked about learning, and I'm going through a learning process now, coming into academic entrepreneurship. And my first partner in this is Professor Collins. And maybe, Jim, you can tell us.
Sure. So I'm a professor of biomedical engineering here at Boston University. And my lab focuses on developing new technologies to address a range of problems in medicine and biotechnology. I joined the BU faculty in 1990. And what's interesting to think back to that time is that in the very early 90s, academic entrepreneurship was viewed as being dirty. It was viewed as kind of an unsettled activity that a serious scientist and engineer in the academy would not do because it would be beneath them and they might be soiled or compromised by the involvement. That actually changed pretty dramatically by about the mid to late 90s when you saw engineers, scientists, nerds on the covers of magazines. You became a rock star if you were a technologist that had a successful company. And you saw universities, including Boston University, jumping into the game. And I was not shy. I, too, jumped in the game. I thought, okay, I read Fortune magazine and Business Week. I know enough business to start a company. And I failed miserably. So I think a message to give the students is that, yes, go and do it, but do not be afraid to fail, and don't be concerned if you fail. And in my case, I made basically every mistake you could. And probably the biggest mistake I made, which is very common among professors, particularly engineering and science professors, I focused on the technology. To me, I thought technology was everything. It's what I did. But in fact, I found out repeatedly that it's a very small part of the equation for successful business from the tech side, maybe 10%. And really, the team is much more important, as well as the market and the business opportunity. BU's been incredibly supportive and helpful to me. We, in our lab, focus, for example, in a new area called synthetic biology. This is an area where we're introducing engineering principles at the level of molecular biology. We're basically designing synthetic circuits as an electrical engineer would, but out of biological components, and using these to reprogram organisms. What we came up with, for example, just a few years ago was the ability to re-engineer bacteriophage. Bacteriophage are viruses that specifically and only infect bacteria. Two students in my lab, Mike Curris and Tim Liu, came up with different ideas where they could engineer them to basically go after nasty bacteria. In this case, we did our usual academic thing, but both Mike and Tim decided they wanted to launch a company. And I said, sure, go to it. I'll give you my backing. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do much on the ground, but I can point you in the right direction. And Vinit's office stepped in and helped them, actually gave them mentoring. The BU also gave them bridge funding. Initially, their business model was primarily to go out and win every university business plan competition they could find, which has limited opportunity to build value into a company. But with Vinit's help, they actually went out and further built the team by recruiting a serial entrepreneur, Micah Rosenblum, who took a risk on the young team and the technology, and were able to raise several million from venture capital groups and are now using the technology to address real-world problems in the oil and gas industry, in the food industry, in HVAC and air and cooling systems, basically using green solutions. And so I think it speaks to really how, in this case, it was a student spin-out. And I think it's something that I'm very happy to see BU ramping up efforts on. I think it's a culture that we certainly can tap into more at BU. Our Dean of Engineering, Ken Luchin, has pioneered the introduction of entrepreneurship classes to our undergrads and has brought in many successful BU entrepreneurs to speak with our students. I think we need more of that. That I think we have some of the brightest students in the country. What I often say to my students is that when I think about them compared to MIT and Harvard students, they're as smart as any of the young people walking over there, but they have an arrogance deficit relative to the Harvard students and an ambition deficit relative to the MIT students. And I like it when many of the students come up to me and they complain about particularly that ambition deficit. They say, I'm ambitious. I say, well, I'm glad you think that, and you have to act on it. And I think we need to do more here to inspire our young students to go out and make a difference in the world, which I think they can.
That's fabulous. I love that ambition deficit. We have to figure out a way to address that somehow. You know, a pill for that would be fabulous. But has anybody read Steve Jobs' book? We got one person. Has anybody bought it yet? Right?
This is the book about Steve Jobs.
This is the book about Steve Jobs. It's not a book by him, but it's a book about him. So in the book, you know, Steve Jobs is always sort of known for talking about technology and art. In other words, it's not just about technology, it's also about art. And in some ways, the art sort of influences the technology to create simple solutions, at least simple to the user. And he credited his first understanding of that concept from a Boston-based entrepreneur. And can anybody guess who that is? Somebody read the book. So Edwin Land, the founder of Polaroid, the owner of hundreds of patents. Everybody knows the old Polaroid, the SX70 that just kind of folded out. So I want to ask the panel a little bit about simplicity. Simplicity in your business, in the products, in your naming, like LID. Fantastic name. Tell me how you came up with the name, Ben.
Well, it was developed by the most ambitious students on the planet, a group of some beer and a group of my friends at BU sitting in our apartment, literally, with this idea and us saying, what do we call? What are all the names we call hats? Because we want it to be that simple. I think this whole notion. So I credit my 3 roommates. They never got paid for it, and to this day they're begrudging. The notion of simple, I mean, that's sort of all I've done. And a team of HBS grads came to see me a few months ago, and they described to me what they were doing. And they were sitting around a room trying to figure out a business to go into. I can't think of anything more daunting than trying to come up with an idea for a business to go into. Because for me, you're solving a problem, and that then becomes the idea. But sitting with a white piece of paper trying to come up with something to start, you know, neither of the 2 businesses that have been most successful that I've been involved with were brand new. They were both taking an existing business and making them better. I love the notion of looking around at anything, and I do it incessantly, and saying, why can't that be better? Why can't that be better? Why can't that be different? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are stuck on the fact that they have to create something from scratch, that they have to redefine the world. I'll tell you, changing consumer behavior is incredibly hard. But getting consumers to do something better or providing them a better experience than the way they did it, it's actually easy. And once they do it once, they keep doing it. The simplicity part is, my grandfather taught me the expression, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And we swear by it. It's that simple. Everything we do, we try not to out-trick ourselves. We try not to out-trick our customers. We look at the business and we say, what is the least path of resistance? What is the simplest way to get the consumer, to get the end user excited about what we're doing? Sometimes really cute is really fun, but really cute is really confusing. For example, people say at the Rue La La experience, Rue La La, for those who don't know it, is an online shopping site. You have to be a member to shop there, and once you're a member, you're notified every day at 11 a.m. of these great limited duration boutiques that take place in which you can buy branded merchandise at a unique value, at a special value. And people say to us all the time, your shopping path on the site, it's so simple and so great. Why doesn't everyone do it? Well, our shopping path on the site, the little secret is it's not so unique. There's one major difference between how we handle the shopping path and how most e-commerce sites do. To get into Rue La La, you have to log in at the front door. You have to log in by putting in your email address and your password. So at that step, you've already gone through the accreditation standpoint. You've passed through security. So when you go to buy something, you can just say buy, and you're done, because you've already logged in. Whereas on most sites, you have to add it to your cart, then you go to this whole checkout process. We don't have a checkout process very simply because in essence you've checked out when you check in. So it's a very simple approach so shopping cart abandonment, a phrase I used before, about 70% of all shopping carts are abandoned online. On Rue La La, 20% of all shopping carts are abandoned, or we like to say 80% of all shopping carts turn into a converted customer. Through a pretty simple approach, not through science, there's been how many millions of dollars have been spent through technology companies that you've seen who have come up with incredibly unique new shopping carts that are virtually persistent and do all these things. We simply changed the path. And by changing the path, saw a massive change in behavior. So it's a little bit of how we think about simplistic. It is what's the lowest, get out of the way. Let the customer shop, let the customer do their experience, listen a ton, and the minute they want you to make a change, the minute they tell you, make the change.
Alleviating poverty. A simple concept, but not that easy to do. Meera, what are you doing about that?
Well, right now, social entrepreneurship, which is using money to give people a leg up rather than a handout, is really the way that people they're re-looking at philanthropy. Right now, social entrepreneurship is roughly a $40 billion business, quote unquote. In the next 10 years alone, it's slated to be a $600 billion business. Do you think there are entrepreneurs out there looking at ways to make people live better, live longer, live stronger? Definitely yes. Part of what we do is connecting people all around the world, and some ideas are simple, some are complex. Simple ideas include solar energy in Africa. Until I got into this, I had no idea that most families in Africa, if they could afford it, would have basically a kerosene-fueled food-making system. And so at the end of the meal, there was so much carbon monoxide in the small hut that most people just were not getting a good night's sleep. Now there are entrepreneurs rushing to be on the bandwagon to do this. This morning, was it yesterday? When did we meet? Yeah, last night, my husband and I met this other group of entrepreneurs that own the patents to 8 incredible vaccines, which are going to change the face of the planet. Social entrepreneurship is definitely changing thanks to a different way of looking at alleviating poverty. Another way of alleviating poverty is through creating homes for less advantaged people, for about 1 lakh of rupees, this group of entrepreneurs they've raised the money and they're creating these incredible villas for people who can buy them for 1 lakh of rupees, which means it's so much easier to get a loan or a collateral for a smaller place. And these villas are absolutely beautiful. They are 3 bedrooms, a tiny patch of garden, running water, excellent flushing system, etc. And there are tons of people around the world who want to be in this business because the rate of return is 22%.
And
it's
by the way,
incredible.
1 lakh is about $2,000.
It's just an innovative way of looking at solutions for the planet, because all of us realize that we're going nowhere. When you make a certain amount of money after that, and I think Jeet alluded to that, how much more can you own? I mean, the planet has to rise with you, and there's a certain incredible satisfaction in coming up with solutions to do things for other people. So that's where social entrepreneurship is at, and I hope many of you sitting in this room are going to come up with ideas to take that 600 billion goal even higher.
Yeah, so, the bottom of the pyramid, as, everybody said, there's a fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, as C.K. Prahlad said. So remember, audience, you can ask questions through those little cards. A quick question to you, Jeet, about being a CEO versus a board member. Somebody in the audience just asked that. What's the difference?
Well, I think when you are running a company and you're about 150% of your time, at least in my case, you are totally sort of engulfed by that. You're totally every hour of the day you are thinking about your customers, about your employees, about your shareholders, and you don't think about anything else pretty much. Being a board member, which is the phase that I'm in now. And it's much more relaxing. It's much more interesting. You get to, give your opinions and walk away.
The analogy I've always heard is the difference between a grandparent and a parent. A grandparent, you get to go visit and say hi, and then the minute they get ugly, you run away.
Exactly. And I'm a grandfather too now, so I can relate to that as well. I think one of the points that I was Vinit just reminded me of when we talked about this issue of wealth creation is that unless they change the laws where they say that you can take it with you when you die, and since that's not going to happen, I think I totally agree that the biggest thing that the entrepreneurship has allowed us to do is to really get to do this all over again. So my objective is to work with many young entrepreneurs who are beginning to think about doing new things, and to be able to help them in any ways I can, both financially as well as through mentoring or as a board member, and see what it is that they can do, see how far they can go. And the objective is not necessarily a return on investment, even though the only reason I want that return so I can do that again. That's my objective for return, so that I can keep on doing it, because otherwise if I don't get the return, I cannot continue to do it. But outside of that, I don't have any financial interests beyond that. I would like these enterprises to succeed, and I think because of that, I think the financial issues become important issues. But I just love the energy and the excitement that a startup creates, that an entrepreneur creates, irrespective of what the problem is. I'll tell you a story, a very brief one. I got involved with a very young entrepreneur, a graduate of Yale, who worked at Google for 2 years. And he was not sure what he wanted to do, but he wanted to do something on his own, and was looking for some guidance, some money. And he was very clear. He says, I'm not sure what I want to do with this, but I want to do something. And this company is now up to 9 people. And I just talked to him the other day. A very major investment firm is valuing this company at $200 million, and they have given him $27 million on the last round. Wow. Okay, so my point is that this gentleman who started this company had no idea what he wanted to do. He had some interests. He wanted to follow those interests. And the interest that he had was basically talking about things that he collected. And he thought other people would also like to talk about things that they collect, share those things on the internet. And this company is now getting to a point where it's getting millions of people coming to his site and using this, talking about their own collections. So the idea does not have to be the greatest idea. It was just that he was very passionate about it, and he went out and created something. So whenever you think about doing something, please, if you're passionate about it, you really believe in it, you can convince some of your fellow friends or employees or someone that it is a great idea worth pursuing, you should go out and do it. And then if that doesn't work, go and do something else. So there is no cost of failure. There is no, nobody is going to hold that against you. We are a society where we reward people going out and trying things. I love folks that in fact, I spend more of my time talking to people who tried something but may not have succeeded in a financial sense. I think that's where the learning is even more, because when you're successful, you think you really know something, that you have really figured it out. And that's very dangerous, because every time the world changes, the buying changes, the customer behavior changes, the competition changes. It is just that going out and trying to figure it out is where the challenges are. So again.
Yeah, so, BU has seen enormous change in the time you've been a professor here, particularly in its research endeavor. And there's a question here about, what are the areas of research that are happening at BU that could have some commercial potential? I know it's a very broad question, but Jim, where do you think the interesting areas are that if somebody were poking around looking for an idea out of BU, that's where they should spend time?
So I'll touch upon a few. I think the material science work that is going on across colleges and across departments is an area to explore. I think that chemistry has gotten a bad rap. So you'll hear about the last century as being the century of physics, this century being the century of biology. And I think that if you actually look at the last few decades, most of the key advances have actually been chemistry. And I think what we're going to see more and more prominently on the commercial side is the introduction of new materials. So we have some leading internet entrepreneurs here where you're really trading on information, but we still like to buy products from these things. And I think we're seeing new developments in materials where you're seeing the interface of physics, chemistry, and engineering coming together. And BU is really leading the charge on many counts, particularly from a nanotech standpoint. Nanotech is mostly at the microscale, not at the nanoscale, and really is just a fancy word for chemistry in many cases. That's one area. I do think that BU is also helping to lead the charge on changing the way that drugs are developed. And it's an area that I'd be cautious about investing in, but to explore. We have many, many different groups approaching it from a systems biology standpoint as well as from a chemical biology standpoint. And what I think we're going to see is, going back even to your question on simplicity, is that you'll see groups increasing in BUs helping lead the charge to embrace the complexity of disease, to try to understand that it is complex, not ignoring it, and to address it, for example, from combination therapy standpoint. And what we're seeing at Boston University with efforts, whether it's for infectious disease through the needle, which is our BL4 facility, or through efforts in computational medicine with Ivy Spear and different groups, where folks are beginning to think about how you can use combination therapies to address it. Our group is leading some efforts in this regard, and what's fascinating about this is that we've actually spoken to a number of pharmaceutical and biotech companies, and to a group, they've told us, we don't do that. That is, when we develop drugs, we try to develop a single drug that will go after a single target, and when you hear target or you read about targets, that basically means a gene or protein that you're trying to inhibit typically. But when we've told them that the biology is not that simple, it's maybe not that complicated, but that you need to address 3 or 4 or 5 targets, they say, no, we don't do that. And yet now I'm beginning to see a sea change, both from the academic side with BU leading the charge, but some pioneering companies like Novartis that are beginning to embrace combination therapies.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to switch a little bit to something that's kind of more personal, and it addresses a couple of questions here. It's really about the work-life balance. I always get this question whenever I moderate, and I can understand that. We have busy careers, all of us. As my wife points out to me, I spend way too much time networking. So there is a question about networking from the audience, believe it or not. So I'd like each of you to just talk about one tactic that you employ for work-life balance. I'll start. Go first.
Learning to say no. So in academic profession, there are a lot of demands on your time, whether as a professor or as an academic entrepreneur. And there are many, many opportunities that are presented to you. So I learned early the value and the importance of saying no. And that's not simply saying no to the things that you don't want to do. It's actually saying no to many things that you would like to do. And I think that's a very big challenge for a young person because you feel different pressures as well as you have your own desires to become famous, to be involved. And if you can say no, it will help balance your life, work and family and friends much, much better.
Somebody else?
Well, I thought my life was pretty balanced. Somebody else may have a different opinion. And the reason I say that is because I always told everybody at work that though we were passionate about what we were doing, our business was not a life and death issue. It was that our products were not going to kill anybody. Our products were also not going to save any lives. So there is a time when we are done with work, and after that point, I don't want to hear from anybody. So when I left office, I said, don't call me. And don't send me emails because I'm not going to look at it. Because nobody is going to die, okay, because of what we are doing, or we are not going to save any lives, okay. So the world is not going to, be affected by if I didn't see my email right away. So I thought that created a discipline within the organization that unless there was a customer emergency of some kind, that was the only time somebody would call me. So when I came home, I was with my family. And I think I'm being honest about it. My wife may feel differently, but that I did not think about work. So I worked, and then I stopped. So I would call it a balance.
I had pretty different experience. I'm in fact sitting here dying to check my iPhone for my emails, and it's only been 20 minutes. I think, I do think I have pretty good work-life balance. My wife definitely begs to differ. I think that when you go into the field of entrepreneurship, hard work pays off. And I don't think that people should get into that field. I don't think people should try to start not everyone's made up, was created to start businesses. I think that it's probably in all of us, but not all of us are going to do it or should do it or can do it. My head is always spinning with my businesses, always has been 24/7. And I'm on my device all the time when I get home from work. It's a trick, it's a battle, but our business doesn't stop. Our business is not 9 to 5. Our business is 24/7, and it's 365, and that is the new world. And the notion of going home at night and thinking that the business is going to stop, it's just not the case. So within that world, with the knowledge that for our business to be the best at what we do and to create the type of scale that we want to create. And by the way, it's never about wealth creation. It's one of the things you talked about early on, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I will suggest never at day one did we think we're going to get rich from this. It's just not the motivating factor. And the people that I know that have gotten to business to get rich from it are the people that fail the fastest. But for me, work-life balance is a battle, and what I do is I say, I'm not going to miss, I have 4 kids. I'm not going to miss my kids growing up. I coach in every single season. I squeeze it in. I go to practices, and I come home, and I have dinner, and I try to do it with my family. I might work at night from my bed or whatever it may take. But I think the bitter reality is if you're going to want to start a business and create something really unique and really special, it's going to be a battle. One of the things that you are going to have to deal with is work-life balance, and I love my work, so it gives me good balance. And and I love my kids and I love being with them, but it's a reality of being an entrepreneur. Most great entrepreneurs that I know are the hardest workers I've ever seen. It's one of the hallmarks, I think, of great entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Ben. Meera?
I mean, most people who love what they do don't think about it as work. I mean, for me, my work is my life, and my life is my work. I mean, I haven't found the boundary that defines what is what. I mean, I live my life based on my ideals, and for me, it's sort of all merged into one. And like Ben, I'm constantly on my BlackBerry. I'm constantly on planes, but at the same time, I feel like I'm always there for my kids and my husband because I make it a point to be there. But I don't want to dwell on that. I want to share one thing which you initially asked about, which was, is there one thing about networking that you've learned that you'd like to share? The one thing I would like to share is never, ever, ever underestimate anyone. That is the biggest lesson I've learned in life, and also the greatest lesson that has heaped tons of successes my way. Never underestimate anyone, because everyone has something to add to your life, and you have something that you can give to their lives. We are a symbiotic society. We're a symbiotic planet. We're a symbiotic universe. And that's just the most important lesson I've learned in my life.
That's fantastic. The questions are pouring in. I think there's some more specific questions. There's a question out there about what career path would you follow to become a VC, and I might just address that if that's okay for you guys, since I've done it. Most venture capital firms generally hire two ways. One way is you come in from the bottom. So you join as an associate, generally what's known as a pre-MBA associate. And then you do that for a couple of years, and you go away and get your MBA, and you come back as an MBA'd principal, and you work your way up to general partner. It takes a long time. It's a pyramid scheme. It takes you a long time to work your way up that pyramid. That's one way. The other way is to have made a venture capital firm a lot of money, and they let you in either as a venture partner or sometimes as a general partner if they think they can raise another round of funding with you. So I think that might answer that question. There are also sort of lots of questions about, why did you stop doing the for-profit thing and switch to nonprofit?
I don't know. I just felt there was just a calling to just do more with my life. I mean, just doing the business wasn't giving me satisfaction. And I always say that I didn't choose my life. Life chose me. What happened in 2000 was that my husband and I accidentally bought Eleanor Roosevelt's townhouse in Manhattan. And I had no idea the history was so incredible, and that Khrushchev had been there, and Eleanor had launched so many people's career at the UN from there. So many world leaders had been there. And people started calling me saying, we can't afford the plaza. Do you think you could do a fundraiser at your house? Or can we use your home for a dialogue? Or, newspapers were calling me. And sort of de facto, the whole thing merged. But it's just a calling. When I was 16, I used to take the bus to Baikala and work in Mother Teresa's Ashadan. I did that every Saturday from when I was 16 years old to 18 years old, did not miss a Saturday. It just gave me a lot of joy to go and, play with the kids and feed them. And it is something I started with school, and I just continue doing. Sometimes you just like entrepreneurs, it's within you. You just want to do it. But having said that, in addition to the not-for-profit, I am doing a couple of other innovative things which will be for profit, and that money will go back into the foundation. So, I haven't really lost my entrepreneurial instinct. It's very much there. But while I have the mic, I want to share another thing that I learned this morning, which was from the Urban Planning Summit, that by 2030, 1 out of every 7 people is going to be over the age of 65. So as entrepreneurs, we have to be looking at what we can do to make the lives of older people, because we're living much longer, productive. How will they get around? How will they eat? How will they sleep? How will they read? I mean, there's just so much opportunity out there. So there's a big merging between not-for-profit social entrepreneurship and for-profit entrepreneurship. While helping so many people make their lives more comfortable, there's also the opportunity to make a lot of money. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's great. And so the other sort of grouping of questions I'm getting is about team building. And so a lot of the students here are saying, look, I'm starting fresh. I don't have a network. How do I attract the right kind of people to my endeavor? And I think, Ben, you talked about surrounding yourself with really good people at LID. How did you attract them? And how did you figure out who they should be?
So the hallmark of a founder, of an entrepreneur, usually is a whole lot of passion. It's probably the most common ingredient. And the good news about passion is it's contagious. And passion can't build a business. Passion can get you sort of to inning one. But what passion can do is it can get a lot of other people around you pretty excited about a business. And for me, it was 24/7, maybe unfortunately, but 24/7 thinking about these businesses and talking to my friends about these businesses and talking to my friends' friends about these businesses. And lo and behold, in every conversation, somebody would say to me, you know what, you should talk to this person about it. And I'd go talk to that person. And I think for most of my businesses, I'm pretty infectious. That when I describe them, it gets other people excited about them. That doesn't mean they're going to work, but it gets other people excited about them. And generally, the way I built the initial team at LIDS was twofold. One, I was really, really excited about the idea and thought it could be something unique and special. I felt like I was amazingly solving a problem, not the level of problems that we're hearing about here. I feel sort of stupid now. But I felt like we were solving a problem for this 18-year-old, if you will. And when I would explain this, I would also explain at the same time, I'd say, here's what I'm good at. And here's what I think I need help with. And one of the most frightening aspects of someone who's going to go to work for an entrepreneur or a founder is that founder's not going to have a very good sense of self. That founder's going to want to hold it all so tightly to them that they're not going to let anybody else participate in the success. And I think communicating, at least for me, it was letting people know where I thought my current limitations were, because I don't think you're ever limited long term, but what are the current limitations, and letting people know that you want people in the tent and that you want their help in building the business and you want your help in making the decisions. And those founders who hold it so tightly that they say they want people, but they don't really want people, that's pretty obvious pretty quickly inside of a company. And in fact, I think it's probably pretty culture defining. So my recommendation to people that have, I don't love giving advice per se. I'll tell you what worked for me. What worked for me is talking a lot about my ideas to a lot of people, getting a lot of feedback, and making sure everyone understood that I believe I needed help in certain areas of the business, and there was things that I couldn't own myself.
Jim, do you have some thoughts on this?
Just a couple things to add. One is, as I mentioned earlier, I do think building the team is probably the most important thing you can do for whatever organization or group you're looking to launch. And that, I would say, is be incredibly careful who you team up with. That particularly if you have a good idea and you're young and you have passion, there will be a lot of people coming out of the woodwork expressing interest. Now, you might be young, but different people are going to appear, and I would say be incredibly discriminating as to who you're going to team up with, both in terms of their character, experience, and so it's very flattering for somebody to come and express interest in your idea or your venture, and that goes at the level of investors as well as people you hire. And my experience has been that it's better to say no again and to take your time on finding that right group, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them, and the success of the organization is going to be critically dependent upon the team you build.
I think the corollary to that is that even though we all say that team is very important and finding the right people is really the most important thing, I would say that after having been an entrepreneur for the last close to 35 years, my track record in terms of finding the really A players in all areas was sort of mixed. It was maybe it was 60-40. And but the thing that is even more important than finding the A players is when you make a mistake and you know inside that you made a mistake, it is equally important to fix that mistake right away by being honest with that person that maybe there is no good fit here, and maybe both you and I are better off if we separated at this point. And in fact, that is I see that's where most organizations fail, is as they get beyond the founder stage, when they hire more people, even when they realize that they've made the wrong decision in terms of hiring people, they don't fix it. They say, oh, well, he or she is doing a good job, let's continue with that. And that's a fatal mistake in many, many cases, especially if that person is in a position of leverage. So yes, we do try to find as good a team as we can. And I think the best way to do that is to really network like crazy and get to know the smart people. I went to school in a school called IIT in Mumbai, and I was not the smartest kid, so I developed a sort of a trait or a strategy to get very friendly with the smartest guys, because so that they could help me with my exams. And that, so people ask me, what did I learn at IIT? I said, I learned how to find the smart people. And that has really benefited me, I think, in all my companies, because I by myself could not do anything. But I could somehow, you call it luck or whatever, I was able to surround myself with some really smart people, and they built the company. So I think that was, if anything, finding the right people, and you do that by just meeting many, many people, and then if you make a mistake, fixing that mistake right away.
Yeah, in a ways, America is kind of unique because it's easy to part ways in companies, unlike many other countries where it's pretty hard once you've hired somebody to let them go. And I think also similarly, you know, America has another big advantage, and that's venture capital. Now, of course, venture capital has spread, or the model has spread all over the world, but it, you know, it's still very prominent here. And I think there are a number of questions around. So if I'm thinking about starting a company, you know, how should I fund it? Should I, you know, bootstrap? Should I go get angel or friends and family money? Should I go get venture capital money? Some thoughts on that. Ben, you want to?
So I've made good decisions and bad decisions in raising capital. All money is not green. It may look green, but it's not. There's the different types of firms out there, and when I first raised money for the first company, Lids, the firm that I raised almost destroyed the business through their sort of demands of how the business would roll out. And what I didn't know at that time was how to really get to know a potential investor, and how to understand if we were in alignment on how we want to grow this business and what we want to do if this, that, or the other thing happened. And there's a lot of things that can happen. Some you can't predict. Many you can predict. So my first capital raise made it incredibly challenging, and we battled through it and ended up coming out okay at the end, but it was painful at times. Painful at times even for years of painfulness within the investor base. And the lesson I learned was a little bit of how to pick the right investors. And sometimes you don't have the luxury of choice. You're dying to get some money, and whoever will give it to you, you think you got to take it. And it's where you really have to pause. For me, the way I have looked at raising money since then is first of all, really getting to know the firm, and really getting to know the partner and the associates who will be working specifically on my business. So it's no different than an ad agency. When you hire an ad agency, a lot of people say you hire the name, whatever agency it is, Arnold or someone else. But what you really want to find out, obviously, as everyone who's done this knows, is who's my team? Who's my account team? Because I'm going to be as good as my account team. So the first thing for me is getting to know who my team is at the venture firm, really getting to know them. Then, two types of reference checks. One is the companies that have been successful. Those are easy, though, because whenever you have a successful business, the odds are you've been in pretty good alignment with your firm and they're happy with you. The question isn't what happens when you're successful. The question is what happens when shit goes wrong. And I guarantee you shit's going to go wrong. Bottom line, it just is. Hopefully success will happen, but it won't happen the way we all thought it would happen. And so what I do now is I talk to a lot of the companies that either are no longer in business or that had huge challenges along the way, and I want to find out how the venture firm reacted when stuff didn't go as planned. That is illuminating to me. Did they step in and provide more funding when you needed it? And what type of funding? So it could be that when a business has a challenge, there's an opportunity for a venture firm to pounce and to charge in and get more options and have the money be a little bit more painful for the founders or for the entrepreneurs or for management. And learning how these venture firms deal with that reference process has really become the de facto way that my partners and I look at raising capital. And there's probably no better way, like in life, is referrals. Talking to partners in the business and finding out where they've been successful. As far as how much you raise, I believe in raising as little as possible up front so you can understand what you got and what it looks like. And once you understand the idea better, raise more. I don't believe in A, B, C, D, E, and F. I believe in seed, A, and then trying to make your A round last a while so you can focus on running the business and not focus on raising money. But that seed round, I think you take as little as you can until you know what you got.
Do you do that same 360 reference for friends and family?
So I actually really try hard not to do friends and family. It is one of the things that I did it in my first business, but it's one of there is enough pressure on an entrepreneur with the associates that you're trying to make sure you make successful. With all of the other pressures in a business, the notion that you're going to go home and talk to family, or you're going to go out on a Saturday night with friends and they're going to want to know how business is. And I've done it a little bit. Whenever I've done it, I've regretted it, even when there's great financial opportunities. So recently, a friend of mine was an investor in Rue. They made a bunch of money on it, and all my other friends said, "Why didn't you invite me?" So it's almost no win. So I really do shy away. It's not because I don't want to share the benefits with friends, but I think that life is hard enough and running a business is hard enough that it's tricky.
That reminds me, Jeet never put me on the IPO friends list. Jim, you had some thoughts?
Maybe just pick up on this last point because Ben was speaking to that you want to share in the wealth for your friends is that it is probably my biggest regret from the first startup I was involved with was that I went and raised money from friends and family, and the company was not a success, and so the friends and family lost their money. Now the ones who we took from could lose their money, but I still see them at the holidays. I see them at reunions. I see them at funerals. In some cases, I think they're thinking or wishing it was my funeral. In some cases, I'm wishing it was my funeral. And it's something I would say, find other money if you can. And your friends and family are going to say, oh, Jimmy, he got good grades. Oh, he's going to be a success. Okay, give me money. Let me give him money. And they'll be happy. Most will be very happy. And even relatively sophisticated ones will be happy. But the probability that you'll be a success is very low, no matter how passionate and talented you are. And as a result, the probability you're going to get the money back or give them benefit is low.
The only thing I would add there is to look at the mission. The Giving Back Foundation that I run, we have 70 affiliates. And I learned very earlier on, it's very important to look at what their mission is and how their mission aligns with yours, and how your mission aligns with theirs. And if the missions don't align, it's important to say, you know what, at this point in time, I don't think we can work together. Because if you think that over time the mission can change, can develop, can be rearranged, it doesn't happen. And so it's good to go with someone's mission, the way it is at the point in time when you enter into a transaction with them.
Yeah, and I think venture capital is the same. Wouldn't you agree, Jeet? That you got to find somebody who's aligned.
I agree. I mean, I was very lucky. I happened to find a venture capital firm, and the senior partner there, for whatever reason, decided to invest in my first company, and that company eventually worked out. So I stayed with that firm, and the experience was great from my point of view. But as I deal in my current situation, when I'm working with a lot of the younger entrepreneurs who are looking for money, it's all over the place. I mean, many of them are able to get venture financing. There are others who are not, and they have to find money somewhere. And they find it through the angels network, wealthy individuals who are willing to invest money. And if that doesn't work, the last resort in friends and families. As much as we may not like it, but in some cases, that is the money of last resort. And some of these guys are doing it. So hopefully, they will be able to transition from that to maybe to the angels, maybe to the VC network. But I think, again, it comes down to like selecting your team. You have to be very sure as to who you are taking money from. And when I say, people say, so Jit, what do you mean by very sure? I think it's just a good feeling about that partner who's going to work with you, not the firm itself. I agree with you that the firm name doesn't mean anything. It is that partner who's going to work with you. If you feel good about that person through reference check, through your own interactions, then by all means, go with it. And I think it's a two-way relationship. You have to be very transparent and very open with that person, and they have to be the same with yourself.
So BU attracts lots of international students. It seems to be, one of our specialties here. And many of these students now face complex choices, especially the entrepreneurial ones. In the past, there weren't too many places you could start a company and have all the support services, venture capital, other team members than the US. But now other countries are coming up. The other thing is it's getting harder to get visas to stay here in the US. So what advice would you give to a young person from China or from India or from Brazil? If they're entrepreneurial, what would you tell them? Stay here, go home?
Well,
If they're Asian, I would say go home. We know where the money is and where the opportunity is. But now that you've brought up the topic of global entrepreneurship, I currently live in 5 countries. And when I say literally live, it includes grocery shopping. And I find that in all the countries, India, China, mainland China, Hong Kong, I differentiate them because they are 2 sort of different types of businessmen. The UK, the US, and Dubai. The entrepreneurs in all these countries have absolutely the same characteristics. They are passionate, they are driven, they have an idea, they go after it, they work 24/7. It's absolutely the same. But in terms of opportunities, the difference is that with entrepreneurs in the US, what I see is that entrepreneurs in the US, there are just so many more systems in place. They're able to scale it much faster. There are many, many entrepreneurs in India. I mean, you have to look at this panel. I mean, the majority of us are Indian. So we have, and that's
I didn't notice.
But in India, what happens is we have many entrepreneurs that are doing like entrepreneurial activities on every corner of the country, but it's not scalable. And in China, I think it's their geographical constraints. But I would say if you're an entrepreneur, wherever you are, just my advice would be just take the opportunity and run wherever.
Ben?
I think it's completely circumstantial. I don't think that there's an answer to the question. I think it comes down to, I spend my life from a business perspective looking for unfair advantages. I don't want an even playing field. I want an uneven playing field. I want to figure out how I can get a leg up on any potential competitor. And if that meant I should be in the US, great. If that meant that I have great relationships in my hometown, then I'm going to go to my hometown. If that meant that I know enough people in India and the technologists in India can help me do it cheaper and faster, and I know I can do it, then great. But for me, it is about making an uneven playing field so that I have that much more reason why I will be successful than the next person. And wherever that uneven playing field is, that's where I'm going to start my business.
Jeet?
I think the issue of where you start your business is really a question of where you want to live. I think in a global situation, it doesn't really matter. I think my personal experience has been that it's much easier to do it here, but then I have not done it anywhere else. This is the only this is the only place I have done it for the last 40 years, and it has been tremendous. I think what this country offers you in terms of opportunities, no other country even comes close. That's my view. I have not done it there, but my view is that it is so easy to do it here. Okay, I'm surprised that more people don't do it.
I don't think it was that easy.
Well, it is. In my case, I've always felt that it was easy. It was.
Talk to him after.
Maybe I was lucky, but every time I talk to an audience like this, where there are a lot of young folks, I'm amazed that more and more of them are not getting out here and doing it on their own, because there's nothing like it. It's just, and even, again, I point out that the cost of failure is not there at all, right? If you don't succeed, you go and try it again. I mean, what have you lost? It's better than working for 15 years at this giant corporation and wondering why you are going to work every day.
And I think grad students particularly come from all over the world. So what advice would you give them?
Well, so it's an interesting question. I do think Ben's point on it being circumstantial is dead on. When you think back even just 5 years ago, I would have said you're crazy to go anywhere but here in the United States, in my areas, which is biotech. We were the world leaders. But the world has changed. So Europe, for example, I just had a group of Czech entrepreneurs in my office 3 days ago. They're looking to create an innovation hub for all of Europe in Prague. China is the big player now in the space. So in fact, I think they're going to very quickly outpace the United States within this next decade in biotech due to the investments that their government is making, but as well as industries that are around it. And so it will depend. So certainly, no question, we for decades in academia have largely been populated by foreign students at the grad level, in particular in science and engineering. When you look at the cohorts that really helped lead the revolution in tech over the last decade and a half, it's a good portion are from other countries, with China and India leading that way in particular. So I think from that standpoint, it's an exciting opportunity. So I think we should look opposite also, and I think you'll see increasingly American entrepreneurs going to other countries. I think you'll see US students in China helping to lead efforts in new areas such as synthetic biology, where China is desperate to get engaged and they don't have in place the team, the young people or even the older people to help lead the way.
So that's an interesting end to this panel. I think what we heard very clearly is whether it's social entrepreneurship, retail entrepreneurship, big data, or academic entrepreneurship, it is globalizing very, very quickly, much quicker than anybody ever would have thought. And I think BU in a way is at the center of it. You know, we are already a very global university. I know we have plans to expand further globally. And I think, you know, all you parents who are here for Alumni Weekend may hear more about this over this weekend. And I wish you all a fantastic Alumni Weekend. And I want to thank the panelists, please.
Thank you. Thank you.